Hey, YouTube. So, Justin Crouse here. Um, I gotta say, guys, this is just a truth. Especially to anybody out there who's been tossed to and fro. Um, and here it is. So, I've come from a place of not only being a former monster. Um, I was this close to becoming like a serial killer, y'all. I'm not even kidding. I used to think about murder all the time. I went to prison, and um, God really used that time to not only protect me, which was definitely one of my concerns, but as I just yielded everything to Him, and I read the Bible for the first time, really read it, other than just Proverbs and the short verses. I actually got to know what purity felt like, y'all, and it was pretty awesome. This world is super over centralized when it comes to suggestions from different media forms, whether it's even just the subtle thing of constant romance stories. For single people, they don't need to look at something and think, oh, when I get with somebody, it's just going to solve all my problems. But anyway, I don't want to get too off topic. So the purpose of this video is to just encourage, but encourage with truth. And the truth is that for a long time, the United States and their various media forms have been pushing this certain depiction of normality. And on a surface level, it started with we'll just call it Hollywood, and we'll say this is what a white person should look like, right? And so for a long time, my personal experience, I grew up adopted by white people, and I had the skin complexion for white people, but my hair didn't grow like white people's hair, and I didn't have the Hollywood nose or the ears or even the chin. You can't see it right now, but it's a cleft chin. It's kind of covered up. So just off the gate, I had the privilege of everybody, let's look at it like this. So kids growing up, they constantly watching these movies and shows. And you need to think about it, how many times do parents place kids in front of TV to be babysitted with them, or just hand them a device, right? So they think that, and I was guilty of it too, dude. I became a very shallow person. I've not dated people for very shallow reasons when it comes to looks, like females, so anyway, so it's just what we're used to, what we're exposed to growing up, and it influences the way we think. Our first impression is always going to be based off of appearance, um, it's going to be tempted to be powerfully based off appearance. I think it would take an active intentionality to not let it be completely based off of appearance, just because of how much the lust of the eyes plays into just natural sin. So anyway, the truth is, you if you're out there um and you're trying and you're trying and you're trying and you're trying to fit in with the American world, um and you're lonely, uh it's the truth is, look, and I don't mean this in any insensitive manner. um if you don't meet those standards, you don't look like a Hollywood model, or you don't look like a Hollywood common white person, or you know, and here's another subtle one that's kind of crept in through different media forms. I think, it's definitely been suggested that you should feel ashamed to be white. Can't tell you how many people, especially our young generation, that I hear talking about how they're mixed, because but they're obviously white, but they want to talk about every other side of their family, and it's because media forms and very subtly it's been suggested on one level that you should feel superior for being white and meeting those Hollywood criteria when it comes to looks and lifestyle. But on another level, and this is the enemy, cunning, subtle, that you should feel ashamed. And so like for a long time, and I never got this, y'all, but for a long time, you can imagine like African American people, like I would watch things and I would be like, dude, there's like so many white people. Where's like, isn't there like some form of government that's, that's been designated to make certain that every race gets an equal opportunity position to be in, no matter if it's something about like a writer's creative free will. That's understandable, but you have to understand there shouldn't be an allowance for creative prejudice, because it just goes to reinforce that on a level. And so like for a long time I would be like, but you know what? So it would feed the it would there would be like some concern about it, but on another level I would feel kind of prideful about it just because of my skin complexion, not because I actually ever could meet those criteria and identify as a white person or a Hollywood white person on those levels. So anyway, I'll never forget this. So I went to prison, and when I went to prison, um, there was a time where like, so I'm getting close to God and that's all good. My man, scales fell off my eyes, like for real. Oh my gosh. I started seeing, um, and it was amazing, like how God would keep me separated from like the criminal spiritual element there, um, which had kind of just like, well, we're in prison, we don't have to really worry about, like, there's boundaries, and I'm not saying there wasn't good times and stuff. I mean, there was great fellowship and a lot of interactions that I'm really grateful for. But there's just like this, like just letting down, the the leading, letting down like a level of self control to just be more like, oh man, it's normal. It's normal to lust after women. It's normal to lust after women. It's normal to lust after women. I mean, because you got a lot of guys around guys, and when they're tempted to think about their sexual side or their sexual feelings, they don't want to sit there and think about the guy, so they overthink about women, and it's completely understandable. Um, on a very sensual level, on a very worldly level. Doesn't mean it's right. But, if you're not using God to fight those fights, then of course you're going to try to use something that's carnal. That's just the way it is. Anyway, so I was in prison and I'm sitting there, and one of the cool things is we had these opportunities when we were carrying out our works and stuff in different classes and stuff. There were little opportunities where we could fellowship and watch a movie. And I'll never forget, I think it was Barbershop 3. And after watching that movie, y'all, I kind of felt ashamed to, on a very shallow level, just because of my skin complexion and because I was raised by white people, like identify as a white person. Like, not only growing up did I feel like, well, no matter what, I'm never going to meet the Hollywood criteria of what a white person should look like, what a handsome white person should look like. Um, like that, the nose and the ears and the chin and the forehead or the whatever, And the forehead's actually just like that. My forehead's been great for a really long time. This has never been an issue. It's just my hairline. Hello. So anyway, so so like that was already, and then going in there and having it on top of that, like, oh, now it's like you're white, and the reason I bring that up is you got to think like, what did people who weren't white, who grew up in that society and constantly, like all the new movies and TV shows, white person, white person, white person, and it was like a subtle form of saying you're not good enough to be on the show. You're not good enough to be on the show. So that was, that really opened my eyes. And I was like, man, is this what people have been feeling all along? Because I had been able to hide behind the fact that, oh, well, at least I can, very subtly in my thinking, even though I wouldn't have admitted it to myself, that, oh, at least I have a white skin complexion. But honestly, like, dude, we really messed up people by allowing that to continue for so long. So now you got the two, and they're almost level, or sometimes they fluctuate, but the subtle suggestions that white people are inferior, and then there's the suggestion that white people are superior, or and that's stupid. It's so stupid. Um, First of all, I just want to say, and I'll never forget when someone told me this, but we're not. I don't identify as white or black, or I shouldn't. I do because I what the culture I was raised in, and I'm talking about the American culture. I'm not talking about white culture or black culture. I'm talking about the American culture. What's been funneled and fed to kids as they grow up in America through the media, in my generation. I can only speak for my generation, but that was a pretty long generation. So I'm 30 some years old. Anyway, and it was messed up. And like we're not to identify like that. We're to identify as human beings, not black, white, green, blue, gray, red, yellow. We're to identify as human beings. And we lose sight of that when we don't think about scripture. When we don't think when we say, "Oh, okay, well, yeah, we all came from the same people," but it's over millions and gajillions of years. Or if you're a creationist, oh, it's over thousands of years. Um, you don't focus on the truth, and the truth is that we all came from the same place, and the same place that we all came from, we had boundaries, and those boundaries. We constantly transgressed them. We'd set them up, we'd break them, we'd compromise, and over time, our things would culture and civilizations would crumble and repeat the same mistakes. And they say history is to teach us so we don't make the same mistakes. Well, unless we deal with the sin problem, we're gonna continue to make the same mistakes unless we are willing to admit the truth. And so the truth I want to admit to in this video is that uh, based off of my experience, and like this is, and don't take this offensively, please. I don't mean this offensively, but because of the culture that we grow up in. And now, since I went to prison and I haven't been following the world media forums and what they've been projecting, um, I just know what I was heavily into before I went into prison. I know what I was heavily exposed to as I grew up in America. And because of that, a lot of people are, lonely, feeling like, they're not good enough. And the truth is, guys, so this is two guys and women. So the truth is that, especially because of like the rise of, and I know about this because the enemy's tried to really mess with me and to get me to like, to just compromise and just to destroy myself internally, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, because of sexual immorality, which I am heavily against. Like, I had to run a couple of, in the past because of alcohol abuse and drug use, drug abuse, whatever. And all it does is it enables you to just lose try it enables and I'm a Christian, so I'm going to say it this way, but it enables for you to start to try to start to lose sight of who you are and all what you've learned, your wisdom, the um and to adopt things that are based off of those heightened levels of that chemical reaction that happens, or the release of those chemicals that's abnormal and perverse or just destructive. Anyway, whether it be over a period of time or immediately. Oh man, it drugs and alcohol abuse. I mean, even smoking. Like God's word says that we're not supposed to take His name in vain. And I think the enemy attacked the United States. There were so many churches, but there were so many cigarette smokers. And it just was a way to kind of harden the heart and to invite and to make ready or prepare a way for not Jesus, but further compromise and immorality and confusion. And especially like different forms of smoking. I mean, think about it, y'all. Went from smoking cigarettes to legalizing marijuana. How many CBD stuff is everywhere now? Um, Anyway, I don't know everything about all that. What I do know is that there's just so much going on. There's like a battle plan that the enemy has, and he's just been carrying tactic after tactic out, and over a period of time, and you can kind of just see the decline of our society. But I'm not trying to dismiss responsibility, and that's kind of what this video is for. So I'm going to do that, but also I want to say this. So if you're fat, if you have a big nose or a weird nose or ears that stick out or a cleft chin or some other form that doesn't meet up with Hollywood criteria of a handsome or a beautiful person, that sucks for you. I mean, but just live in it, thrive in it. You don't need somebody else to affirm your value. God says that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. You're not going to find that affirmation in other places. You'll find it maybe very shallow places, but ultimately there'll be places where the enemy can just come and say, well, they just said that because the enemy doesn't want you to feel that, because the enemy wants you to think there's something wrong with you. and he wants you to focus on that instead of focusing on all the great things that God has given you. For instance, dude, I'm in great shape. But do I have like a collection of people I can call and talk to and who value me and love me and know me? No. I have everything I ever wanted. Do I have that? No. And you know what? Should I dwell on that? No. And so, like, for you, if you're, fat or ugly or out of shape or something happened and you're just disfigured, God's not going to give you more than you can handle. You could have whatever that you don't have, but you could have so much still. I mean, if you're looking for guidance and how to, you feel like no matter what you do, you just don't fit in, or you just don't have this, or you just don't have that, then I would just encourage you to draw close to the one who from the foundation of the world set things up in such a way that there wasn't supposed to be any inferior complexes or superior complexes. There was just supposed to be this identification of you being made in the image of God, which means that you are in a very most profound way enough and the most beautiful out of all creation. They're better than all the animals. Any form of artwork that you could see where someone paints a picture of some form of vegetation or herb, or like herb or anything, like including any animals. I mean, like, no matter how beautiful that canvas is, you are more beautiful, and yeah, and the way you were made is perfect. But you're not going to thrive in that unless you just admit to yourself where you live, and don't become hateful about it, because you can't do anything with the hate. You can't do anything by saying, oh, well, I'm just, I'm mad that that I had to grow up in a culture which made me feel such and such. You can't do anything with it, so don't become hateful. You can, there's a right way and there's a wrong way about going about things. Just loving people and being good to people is the best way. It's the right way. But you can't do anything with the hate. So don't just become hateful. Just accept it. Accept where you are, who you are, what you have, and be a good steward with that. Now, I'm not saying like, for instance, like for guys out there who think like money is going to solve all your problems. Oh, if you're not someone who was born well endowed, or have great looks according to Hollywood criteria, then you could just throw money at it, and on a very shallow level it'll, or on a surface level it will seem legit, and it would be unspoken. But look, don't play games, dude. You're not called to be a steward with just throwing money at people or things to make yourself feel better about yourself, right? First of all, you shouldn't have to. And I'm sorry that you do. And for women, like if you're in that same area, or if you have a position of power, or if you have something that you can, like, I think a lot of women just throw, like, even, women who don't identify to meet those Hollywood criteria, maybe you're throwing yourself out there. You're worth more than that, regardless of what, the surrounding media influence and suggestion of the past has made you to think of yourself, or has provided opportunities for you to be tempted to think of yourself less. You're worth more than that. I mean, you're worth every single person that feels inadequate, because of looks, because of anything physical, whatever. Like, you're worth so much that the creator of everything beautiful that mankind is perversed in setting up his normals and abnormals of what's socially and culturally acceptable and normal and so forth. Like, the creator of all that was good, very good, sent his only begotten son to die on the cross for you. Okay? He did that for you because you are worth it. You have incredible worth and value. And yeah, so just, don't compromise. Don't think that it's normal. Don't, I've been there, guys. And you end up hurting people. You end up hurting people that you like. You don't have to stay the same messed up person making messed up decisions, because you did that once before. That's just because you did it doesn't mean you have to keep doing it. Like, I'll never forget when God removed that murder from my heart. Like, I could look at people and I wasn't thinking about ways to kill them. And you can't identify that with that. That might sound crazy to some of y'all because you've never been, never had that much evil in you, or I don't know, just never really saw it that way. But, man, that's right there was proof that my heart was transformed. And so, like, recently, I, now, I don't want to forget to say this. When it comes to husbands and wives and, situations where you're just you find yourself already in, no matter what compromises and stupid decisions you made and the lies that you believed in the past, God can be he can awaken things that you'll find that, in a relationship with him and pursuing, like, to live and to be for him, just to exist in the identity that he called you to, instead of the confusion of trying to measure up to a worldly standard that, you feel tossed to and fro because you don't know what to do. You're going to find fulfillment in that, no doubt. And the fulfillment may look different for different people in different situations, places of life. But ultimately, you're going to be confident in your weaknesses and in your strengths. More confident than you've been without God, trying to be adequate enough on your own. I'm talking about the God of the Holy Bible. KJV definitely helps. It's a great starting place. Just be mindful not to cut Jesus out, and to change words and meanings, no matter how subtle they are. Just pay attention. So yeah. Don't do drugs. You're better than that. Don't think it's normal to think about naked women or men all the time. God didn't call you to that either. We're not called to be sexual beings. We're called to be human beings, and our humanity is what separates us from animals. And part of that humanity is the privilege of a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, that one that died on the cross so that all of our sins can be forgiven. I don't. I would love to be able to tell you that after this video, you're never gonna see me transgress again, and I'm never gonna sin again. But you know what? I don't have to keep doing the same sins. And as I continue to sin less and less, I get to find that I get closer. I get to see. I get to become not blind more and more to sin. So I start to see more and more. And in seeing more and more, I can make better and better choices. And yeah, like I don't have to identify as someone stuck in sin, and neither do you. Nor do you have to identify as someone inadequate, which will make a huge difference, especially if you seek and you allow and permit yourself to find your worth from your Creator in the Lord and Savior of not only your identity now, but He also provides you security in eternity from judgment. Because, like, the way that we have messed up this world and the way that we look down or turn our nose up at people, we're going to be judged for that. We're going to be judged for every transgression and everything, whether it be just a small lie to the most heinous. I mean, whatever's socially acceptable is not always right. But thank God there is a law written on our hearts. So even in a twisted society, there's still you can still see that we're still, God's still trying to guide us into truth, into life, and to have us to have those and not cross those boundaries, to where we can live not just at peace, but safe, and we can build each other up, and we can go in the right direction. Just be careful, don't let the enemy twist that. Antichrist is more of an entity and an influence than y'all know, but the love of God is more powerful. I'll never forget this. And so like I was running around fiending for, like, my wife held out on me. She worked with like some, okay, so that's another thing. Hold on a minute. Okay, so if you find yourself in a relationship with someone who for years was involved with a drug crew, okay, first of all, of course, express grace, but do not do not drug or abuse alcohol and let down your guard. Don't compromise your values if you already have strong Christian values, and if you don't, adopt them quickly. Otherwise, that relationship is going to tear you apart, or it's going to try to. Not because anybody's any better or any worse than anybody else. It's just because the enemy has a specific way he's been doing things in the United States, and a lot of people have fallen victim to that. Ultimately, it could be to set you up or to get you to destroy yourself. So they, but anyway, just hold fast to good instruction, and the best instruction you're gonna find for finding yourself. But I apologize because it's kind of selfish. I mean, to look to be so focused on self, but to finding why, to finding the answer to why, who, what, when, where, why, your existence. The best good instruction is you're gonna find is in the Holy Bible. The Holy Bible, not no satanic Bible, not no twisted version that's been edited to allow for compromises and changes in Scripture. But yeah, so just to recap, you have what you have. Be grateful for it. You're not called to be a sexual being. In fact, in some instances, like, if you are with one of those people who did run with a crew for years, maybe, on in some ways had to sell herself or whatever, like, just all she knows or all he knows is to, and I haven't seen, I've never been like a guy in that, but I'm sure there's like, there's a way that guys, you know, mess with or get messed up with the hustle on the streets, to the point where like they just bring some baggage over into like, or maybe a healthy relationship, like a woman would. And so like, maybe sex isn't what y'all, sex might not be the thing. Don't, the enemies use sex so long through that one person, where like there's so much more. If y'all just have to be best friends, I mean, there's a place for sex, and the preachers talk about it, and it's a gift of marriage, blah blah blah. But y'all, there's so much sex in the world. The world doesn't need more sex. Like, you could you could end up having sex without even really like. And this is a bad joke, maybe, or poor taste, but like you could just like walk into a room or just sit down and like, not that you're actually getting off or anything perverse like that, but like the world has been pushing sex so heavily. I mean, because they say sex sells. But I mean, you really don't even have to have sex to think about sex, And you don't even have to actively think about it for the temptation to occur to think about it. So just, still resist it, because the more you say no, the easier it gets. But yeah, like I've come from like, I know what I'm talking about. I do. See these ears? See this nose? See see this hairline? And see this hair? You can't see my chin. But see my skin complexion. Like, and I'm not gonna show you my well endowed or not well endowment. But I'll say this. I know what I'm talking about. And I gotta say, there's nothing in the world that can compare to having that close relationship with God. And I did get there. Oh my gosh! And that purity that I felt, and it wasn't because I was in prison. Let me be completely like. Let me just go ahead and explain and clarify that it's not being in prison. You don't have to go out of the world to not be of the world. For some people, it might take experiences to help them learn about the benefits of focusing on other things, and for having a time to be separate from the world may not necessarily be a bad thing, but you don't have to do that. If you did, God would just start everybody off in prison. So like, freedom is a gift. Liberty is an awesome privilege. It's just we tend to abuse it as a society in America because of not wanting to admit to things. But when we are willing to admit to things, whether they're our weaknesses or our strengths, when we're willing to see things the way God sees them, which is holy, and I mean, we have those boundaries. Like, think about it. He absolutely knows what's right and wrong. We can't. We haven't been here. Um, uh, and I gotta say this. I have sought to figure out, kind of like Solomon, about what was right and wrong through experience. But in my selfishness, I put people in positions where they didn't know what was going to happen, and they made choices, and it hurt them because they were feeling insecure. I mean, this has happened all the way up to my, all the way from my marriage, all the way up to my dad, which is just passed. So you don't, we can't play God. We shouldn't try to play God. We don't need to experience everything to set up boundaries. Um, Honestly, had I had the parenting, um, good parenting, good Christian parenting, man, would have made a world of difference. So I have learned a lot of the don't do's through experience, and then I kept choosing a lot of the learning from experience, bad choices and such, just because, like, I just want to say this too, parents. Teach your kids. Take time to talk to them, not just tell them what not to do, but live out right living in front of them. and have a relationship with them in such a way that they trust what you say beyond a shadow of a doubt. Don't sit there and smoke a cigarette in front of them and then cough and then say, you better not smoke cigarettes when you're older. That's so stupid. And your kid's not going to be able to take anything that you say to heart or to get that guidance, because right then, like, you're living in this hypocrisy, and your kids are going to suffer for it because they can't come to you and ask questions. Now, some people might be blessed to have like that person that God makes sure that's in that kid's life so that they have that direction. But being someone who came away from a very questionable parenting style. I mean, literally, I could have been raised to be like okay. So my mom and my dad, they would just like, instead of loving me on all the different levels, their love language was giving gifts. And then my mom would get drunk and then yell at my dad, and just my dad would just be drunk, be dumb. And so like you could see how a kid raised in that situation might and so like there was a time where I wanted to be free from that. And so like and I was watching things and I was exploring things and I was going through puberty. And you know what I found was prevalent in horror films? Sex scenes. like, So guess what? A young little kid going through puberty, wanting to be free from that or wanting to have control over his environment and situation. I mean, golly, dude, the psychological trauma and conditioning that happens to kids who are not only just exposed to that, but constantly subjected to it is ridiculous. So parenting is not just a privilege, and I don't even say it's a responsibility. It's a duty. A good parenting is a duty. You don't have a right to bring a child in this world, or you certainly don't have a right to continue to have a child at your house if you're not willing to admit to the truth and to take the time to be a parent and not just be a parent. If that makes any sense. Anyway, yeah, man, protect, love, serve. It kind of like sounds like I'm quoting the police badge or something. Their symbol or whatever that's called, seal the thing. But honestly, like that's what we're all called to as members of the society, to protect one another, to love one another, and serve one another. And we're gonna really be in the best place to do that when we identify the way that God wants us to identify, when we admit to our weaknesses and our strengths, and we don't deny the spiritual power and influence of things. Jesus bless y'all. Oh, and before I forget, so a breath in and out. You may learn sometime in your exploration of Christianity. You may hear about YHWH, and that being like how the Jews would transcribe God's name, or that's what God revealed himself as, or whatever. Okay, point being is God is the God of the living. A breath in and out. You breathe because you live. Okay? Jesus Christ means a breath in and out saves. Saves. So, whatever you do, don't keep overlooking the significance of your life. Your life. And know that you are loved with whatever inadequate situation, physical, mental, emotional, whatever thing from the past or thing from the present you're dealing with, or thing you always have to deal with, whatever you feel your limitation is, doesn't have to limit you. Just be a good steward of what you got. I'm going to try to do my part, and hopefully we can just all continue to build each other up in doing that.